Welcome to Inspirational Journeys, everyone. My name is Ann Harrison Barnes, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Gabriel Rodriguez. He is a screenwriter and a teacher now, and he's also started a podcast called, and I know I'm going to butcher this, but Iagikun.
Close enough, yes. Yes.
Welcome to the show, Gabriel.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. Okay, so tell me a little bit about yourself.
All right. So, starts just like a job interview. It's great. I can do this. No, okay. So I was born and raised, yeah. I was born and raised in Miami, Florida. I'm very proud of that. I'm very, boisterous about that. I miss home. I live in North Carolina now, as you said. Um, I am currently a high school English and creative writing teacher. But my education background has always been in writing or in literature. I have a bachelor's in English and a master's in motion picture and television with a focus in screenwriting. Um, and it's something that I've had a passion for quite some time, and something that I've been pursuing and continue to pursue every day. And yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you the question I ask all my guests.
Okay.
What inspired you to become a writer?
Honestly, it was teachers that I had. And, when I was in school, so I jumped around from school to school a lot when I was a kid. By the time I got to ninth grade, I had gotten to my eighth school. And so I had a wide variety of teachers, but none of them really stood out or were memorable. It's not that they were bad teachers. I think it was just because I was constantly moving, and I kind of figured out really young not to get too attached uh, or to really have high expectations of staying in a particular place for very long. But when I finally got to high school and I took a creative writing course, it was through that first teacher. His name is Robert Linfors, um, who really recognized and saw a talent for me, as a writer for myself. And it was something that he immediately encouraged me he immediately encouraged to continue and to pursue, and something that he nurtured. And then when I got to college, to my undergrad, I had an English professor who basically told me the same thing when he read my writing, and he would say to me, "You have talent, you have potential, keep going, keep going, keep going." And then I got to film school, and I had a screenwriting professor who became my mentor. His name was Robert Keats, and he was the one who really solidified and convinced me, not only are you good at this, but you have a future in this. And he would always say to me, you know, shut up and keep writing. Why aren't you writing? And he had this very dry, monotone way of speaking and humor about himself and the way he conducted his classes. But it was something that I always took with me and continue to take with me whenever I write. I still hear all my professors' voices in the back of my head telling me and encouraging me to keep writing.
Oh wow, that's awesome, because when you get that encouragement from those teachers, they become your mentors.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So, have you written anything other than screenplays?
So, short answer is yes, but it's nothing that I have published or posted or submitted anywhere. Um, I am in the process of trying to write my first novel, this science fiction concept, and I've been writing it by hand on and off for the last 5 years or so now. I have really bad ADD, so I'll get an idea and I immediately have to drop everything and pursue it, because if not, I'm going to forget. And then I'll get another idea, and it's this cataclysmic buildup. And then if I ever experience writer's block, or if I'm ever bored, I'll look back at stuff that I've written in the past, and oftentimes I'll forget that I wrote it. And the only time I know, the only way I know it's me is because it's in my handwriting or it's on my computer. And it's like, oh, yeah, I remember this. And I just pick it up from there.
Have you ever tried doing that during NaNoWriMo? Because this is November and we're right in the throes of NaNoWriMo. So I was wondering if you'd ever attempted the
Yeah,
NaNoWriMo.
to be completely honest, this is the first time that I've heard of it. And I've seen a lot of um, people on Twitter in the writing community hashtag constantly tweeting about it. And I looked up some information on it, some background on it. And from my understanding is it is primarily just prose. And
Not necessarily, because you can do
really,
poetry. I don't know about screen.
okay,
You can do other too. There's different
okay,
settings, because I saw that when I announced my project. So if
okay,
I mean, we're still like we're in on the ninth day, but you can still announce a project if you want to try that challenge. I'm not saying you should. I'm not saying you shouldn't.
right. No, I understand. So it's I mean, the long and the short of it is I'm probably not going to submit anything this year, but it's certainly something that I'll have in mind for next year. I want to make sure that whatever I do submit, I want to make sure that it's as good as it can be, as polished as it
Well,
can
you
be.
don't submit. The only thing you do with NaNoWriMo at the end is you upload your manuscript to validate. So you don't. It
Okay.
doesn't have to be perfect. It's
Okay.
basically there's the first time you do it. Basically, their thing is to make your you can make your draft as bad as you want it, as bad as as long as you get in. Their goal is 50,000 words. But if you don't win, if you don't reach
Hmm.
that goal, you're still a winner because you have more words then now by the end of this month than you did when you started.
I
That's
see.
my thing. Yeah, so I've done it since 2014, and
Okay.
if you've been watching me, if you've been following me on Twitter, I've started with my friend and I started a hashtag Nano Cafe, and then
Okay.
I've got some other friends of mine, and I do word sprints in the evenings. And if
Great.
you're wondering,
Cool.
anybody wants to know what a word sprint is, it's like you write for 10 or 15 minutes to see how many words you can get in. And those are fun and they keep you motivated.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
So I was just curious about that. And that's, that's something you may want to, I mean, it's up to you, but you may want to think
Yeah.
about
No, for sure.
possibly
Absolutely.
taking
I'll
that on,
definitely think
because
about it. Hmm.
I've loved it. I think it's fun, and I'm actually cheating because I'm editing a book right now.
Ah, okay.
Yes, they encourage rebels, so you can do a screenplay, and it would be or your novel or whatever, and as long as you get the words in, they don't care.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair
Totally
enough.
fun. No stress, just fun. Okay, so do you find that writing a screenplay is easier than writing a novel, or I know you have to condense it down, but
Right. So I'm going to say yes to that, but that's only because I've been educated as a screenwriter. So um, I started out writing short stories in high school, and many of the short stories I wrote in high school, I eventually adapted into screenplays that I've since submitted to festivals and stuff like that. Um, but the short answer is screenplays are easier for me because I've been formally educated in that more than any other kind of creative writing. Um, Obviously the formatting is very different. You focus on a screenplay primarily on your dialogue and your, character development and just the story arc of that character more than anything else. But just like in any kind of writing, I believe um, you know you you want to include as much detail as it is important to your story, whether it's something about a character or something about a setting or something about an action. You want to include, in my opinion, as much detail as it is important to your story.
right, right.
Hmm.
So tell me a little bit about your process. Are you a planner, or are you what they call a pantser? Or are you kind of what I call a plantser, which is a pantser with a plan?
Well, explain to me what you mean by pantser. What does that mean? I've never heard that
Basically,
expression
you're writing
before.
by the seat. You're flying by the seat of your pants. You write down the ideas as they come to you. There's no plotting involved. There's just, and I used to do it,
What?
but then it was a total mess. And so I do bare bones plotting, but I pants the rest of it. So
So I guess the best way that I can answer that for someone like me is my ideas will come from a place that makes no sense. So for example, so I teach at a magnet art program. So all of my students are very talented artists, illustrators, musicians, actors, etc. And this happened actually just last year. One of my students had this illustration, and it was this very kind of macabre, dark kind of image of someone like leaning over and these snakes or serpents coming out of his spine. And from that, I got this idea for the screenplay that I'm currently pretty much finishing up now, about a little girl obsessed with puzzles. And one has
Ooh.
nothing to do with the other. One has nothing to do with the other, but for some reason, like the way my brain works, I don't know if maybe it's the ADD or just the
No,
way that,
that's a writer.
yeah, it's just the way I perceive and interpret the reality in which I live. um, I just so I I get that basic concept, and all I had in my head at that point was a little girl obsessed with puzzles, and I knew nothing else, and I just ran with it.
Yep.
And
I,
now, yeah, and now it's an 85 page feature screenplay that my wife is actually going to be reading for the first time, probably later today, just to get her take on it. And yeah, it's just my ideas, they'll come from anywhere at any time, and I I I consider it my duty and my responsibility as a writer that as soon as I get the idea, I have to get it out or get it down somewhere, even if it's not
you are a
complete.
pantser.
Okay, so then I'm a
That's a
pantser.
pantser.
All right,
That
I'm a
you are
pantser.
definitely a pantser because you don't plan
Okay.
ahead. And
Mhm.
yeah, like you said, the ideas that come to you that may not make sense when you see something.
Mhm.
That's not that has nothing to do with disability. I'm totally blind and I can't see the pictures, but I can hear the strangest noises, or I can get a song. There's a song that gets stuck in my head, and an idea will come, story idea will come to that. Sometimes I'll pants it. Sometimes I'll just write some idea, and sometimes it's dreams that inspire me too. So
Right.
inspiration comes from anywhere, and it won't make
Absolutely.
sense to, and it won't make sense to the average person, but to
Mhm.
a writer, it makes perfect sense.
Mhm. Yep.
Exactly.
For sure.
I
Absolutely.
get it. I totally get it. Um, has any of your screenplays been adapted for film?
Um. Yes. One. It was actually a student film. It was like a graduation, not graduation. Oh my goodness. Yeah, it was a graduation final project. But it was one. Excuse me. It was one that I wrote after I graduated from school. A friend of mine who was still in film school called me up and said there's a director who needed a script for his final project, and I pitched him an idea. He really liked it, so I wrote it. We raised about $3,000 through GoFundMe or something like that,
Oh wow.
and he went and he filmed it. So that's the only one. Um, I have, however, done really well, especially in recent history, like in the last year or so, with placing in festivals. And for many of these festivals, a grand prize would be getting your script optioned, then adapted, or you're given like a large grand prize amount of money so you can then go and try to produce it yourself or whatever. um, Last year I got the best screenplay at the LA Crime and Horror Festival, uh, and but probably my biggest and proudest festival that I placed in was, I don't know if you're familiar with the Nichols Fellowship.
Mm-mm.
The Nichols Fellowship is the screenwriting um, competition that's hosted by the people who do the Academy Awards, the Oscars. And I was a top 15% finalist out of Lord knows how many hundreds of thousands of entries. This was back in 2013, I want to say. So I'm doing something right. Uh,
Apparently
it,
so.
it's it's just a matter of right place, right time
Mhm.
kind of thing. I lived in Los Angeles for 3 years before I came to North Carolina, and I tried really hard to do what everyone does when they go to LA and network and all that stuff. But what they don't tell you when you go to network in LA is not only do you need to have connections and contacts already there, you need to have money just to get your foot in the door to a lot of these places. And that's without any guarantee that anything will come of it.
Not only that, you need an agent to
And you need
represent
an
you properly.
agent.
Yep.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. So, I was there for 3 years, but we were there in part because my now wife, she went back to school, started a new career. She started her new education in Los Angeles. So we kind of saw it as a win-win situation. We go to LA, she goes back to school, and I try to pursue the writing thing, um, but LA is extremely expensive. I was at one point working 3 jobs, 28 days a month. Uh, and my wife was working 2 part-time jobs while in school full time, and we barely scraped by. So
Mhm.
it's
That's
it's it's not for the faint of heart.
mm-mm. Well, I've only visited there, but I've heard on the news and stuff that the cost of living is 3 times higher in LA than it is anywhere else.
Pretty much, yes, yes.
But then New York is high too, from what I've heard. So that
Hmm.
doesn't surprise me. But so I'm trying to think. Um, so have you? Do you have any plans to try to independently produce any of your screenplays or?
Yes. Right now, though, my primary goal is to um, you know, get some personal things in check first. Uh, the good thing about being a teacher is we get 2 months off every
In the summer?
summer.
Yep, I have a
Yeah,
friend who's a teacher.
yeah.
My
So
buddy Jen. Yep.
so that's a really good time, and for for a lot of teachers, and we all do this, whatever passion projects or side hustles or whatever you want to call it that we try to pursue, many of us ultimately so that we can get out of teaching, because you know pay for teachers isn't so hot. But that's an entirely different topic and subject matter. I'm not going to get into that,
Yeah,
but
Jen talks about that all the time on her podcast too.
yeah, it's yeah, again, I ramble sometimes, I'm sorry, and I digress a lot, but
That's fine.
the short answer is yes. Ultimately, I would love to be able to um, raise money to try to produce something myself. um, I am, and this is going to sound really weird coming from a teacher, but I'm horrible at telling people what to do. In terms of being a director, I could never do that. um, I don't act. I did theater in high school and I enjoyed it very much, but I never intend to pursue it professionally. So I just left it in high school, and that was that. The only other thing that I do that would contribute to film is, and I did this when I was in LA and in film school in San Francisco, is I did fight choreography and stunt work. I've been in martial arts all my life. I have 2 black belts. So I would either do a lot of the fight scenes or stunts myself when I was in film school, or I would train other actors on how to do it.
Oh,
So
you could be a stunt double.
yes, essentially I could also be a stunt double.
Oh, now that's cool. I'm not a big movie buff. I'm more of a bookish girl than a movie buff,
Hmm.
but that just sounds like it would be something cool. But it could be dangerous too. That would
Yeah.
be my thing. Um, and so what inspired you to start your podcast?
I have been trying for a long time to reach out to other authors, to other writers, to other people that share my passions and my interests. And I started with a website that I created like 10 years ago, and it's still up and running, and it's glrodriguez.com. And what I would do on there is mostly write film reviews, or I would write about anything under the sun that interested me. And I never really got as really nowhere near the amount of traction or exposure that I thought that I would get. And that's even with, posting articles on Twitter and my Facebook and
Did you
whatever.
add photos?
Yeah.
Okay,
I
so
added.
let me explain something to you, and I don't mean to interrupt, but
No, it's okay.
but let me explain something too, that, and this is encouragement for anybody listening. For some people, I mean, if you know how to do your SEO, your search engine optimization,
Mm-hmm.
your rankings may go up. But for me, in my own personal experience, growth is slow. I'm
Right.
up to almost 700 followers, and it's taken me 9 years to get there. So don't give up. Just keep
Right.
going. Keep doing what you're
Right.
doing, because somebody is gonna. And then just keep posting them on Twitter. Maybe post a picture on Instagram with a link. You're on
Mm-hmm.
Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Have your blog linked to your Facebook page,
Yeah, I have.
because
Mm-hmm.
that's what's going to get you traction. I mean, it's going to take some time. Believe
Right.
me, don't give up. It's just going to take some time. You'll find, even if it's a small amount.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the podcast, I say, when you touch one life, you touch 1,000. You touch one person, you reach the person that is interested in what you do. They're going to tell people.
Right.
They're going to tell.
Absolutely.
So don't. So if you don't have thousands of followers right yet, Rome wasn't built in a day. So
Right.
don't give up. Just keep doing what you're doing. You're gonna find people, even if it's a small audience. That's your tribe.
Right.
I had to learn
Right.
that too. I had to learn
Mm-hmm.
that too when I started the podcast. So, but yeah, if you want authors to, if you want to connect with authors, Twitter is a good place. There is a Facebook group. I don't know if you have a Facebook account. There is a
Mm-hmm.
Facebook group that I'm in called Right Around the Block. That's WRITE Around the Block. And
Okay.
there's my friend Jen is she got me she encouraged um us to join that one. And there's other teachers in that group, and a lot of people submit their stories to, like, they now this I won't do because it costs money to do some of these, but a lot of people do their the different short story challenges, like NYC midnight
Right.
challenge, and the Yeah Right, and all this kind of stuff. And you don't have to do all that. I mean, we accept writers of all different, whether we do novels, short stories, screenplays, stuff like that. There's something you can bring to the table. So I encourage you,
Okay.
anybody who's a writer, to join the Right Around the Block group, because I'm telling you, we're a good group of people, and there's all kinds of different writing related events and things, and we do competitions and stuff. So
Cool.
yeah, I would definitely encourage you to join that. Um, so I'm I'm gonna ask you. I would ask you a fun question, but I don't know how you would respond to it. But
It's okay.
anyway, if you feel uncomfortable, just let me know. So,
Okay.
if you could have a conversation, over coffee or dinner, or with, or be educated by, excuse me, anyone, past or present, who would that be and why?
Anthony Bourdain.
Oh, wow.
That's a very easy answer for me. He so Kitchen Confidential, the memoir that he wrote, is one of my favorite books. And he is someone that I immediately related to, in the sense of the style of his writing, his voice as a writer. And that's actually something, if I can shamelessly do a plug here for my
Go right
podcast,
ahead.
my next episode for my podcast, Iyagi-kun, is going to be about finding, quote unquote, your voice as a writer, and what that means, and what you can do to essentially help with that process. But Bourdain was someone that, through his books, through his graphic novels, and through his TV shows, was someone that had this gift almost immediately, at least from the point where I started reading his work and watching his shows, uh, that his voice was cemented, and he knew who he was as a writer, and he knew who he was as an educator. even though he wasn't a teacher, I believe that he educated millions. Um, and he's someone who, if given the opportunity, I would have loved to have sat down and had a conversation with about writing, about food, about travel, because those are other things that I greatly, greatly enjoy,
Mm,
food and travel. Hmm.
okay. But tell me the story. But what is this Iyagi-kun, if I'm pronouncing it right?
Okay. Yeah,
What does
yeah.
it mean?
Honestly, so Yagikun is actually the Korean word for storyteller.
Ah,
And yes, and it's on the description of the of my podcast. Um, and it's actually, I have it tattooed on me. I have the Korean characters for Iyagi-kun on my arm. And the reason why I named it that, and the reason why I have it that way, was because, as I said, I've been a student of martial arts for most of my life, since I was 6 years old, and I'm 36 now. So 30 years I've been a student of the martial arts. And primarily what I did was Taekwondo, which is a Korean martial art. And it was, I learned some Korean along the way, very, very basic, as you would learn through a martial arts class. But then I, studied a lot of Korean film, and I haven't been to Korea yet. But the point is that in learning about the Korean culture and being, at the very least, taking part in just that little slice of that culture through that martial art, it was something that I thought would be fitting, to name my podcast after that.
yeah, I noticed that, and I'm subscribed, by the way. But I would encourage you guys to go to Anchor and find out which of your favorite platforms um Gabriel's podcast is listed on. I know it's on Overcast because I subscribed there, and of course I favorited
Yes,
we favorited one another too. So, but yeah,
yes,
do
it,
subscribe to the podcast because I'm sure.
it's
Go ahead.
right. No, I was gonna say it's also on Spotify, Google Podcast, iTunes. Yeah, pretty much anywhere
Probably
that
Stitcher,
you
Breaker,
listen.
Anchor, all that, Breaker
Yeah,
and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Anchor, of course. Yeah, and
Oh, well, yeah,
Breaker. Hmm.
that's our host platform.
Yeah, that's our platform. Yes. Hmm.
All right. So where can people find you online?
So you can find me on Twitter at GRodRaven. So that's at GRODRAVEN. My website, glrodriguez.com, GLRODRIGUEZ.
Excuse me.
And the podcast name is Iyagi Kung. That's IYAGIKKUN. Yeah.
Oh,
Uh, and yeah, those are probably the best places to connect with me and find me
and you're at G
online.
Rod Raven on Instagram too, right?
Yes, yes, yes,
Okay.
I
I
am.
don't do Instagram, but I did see that. So, um,
Yes.
and tell me one quick thing before we finish up. I saw
Sure.
you have a degree in film and television at AAU. What is that?
Yes. That is the Academy of Art University, and it's
Okay, because
located
I
in
was
San.
searching, I googled that and I could not find. I found the American Athletics Union, Association of what is it? Something Association of Universities or American Association of Universities. I could
Mm.
not find that. Thank you
Yeah.
for telling us what that was because I'm like, what? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. It's the Academy of Art University, and they're located in San Francisco,
Okay.
California.
Okay. So anybody, interested in getting into any type of art school that maybe, something you might be, something you might want to look into or, not as you so choose, but I just had to satisfy my curiosity there and probably curiosity of other listeners too. So
Hmm.
I want to thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a
And
pleasure.
you guys, I'm going to do a NaNoWriMo update on Monday, so do stay tuned for that because I have an announcement coming up. But so now I'm going to close us out with a challenge. We challenge you today to go out there and read to get inspired, write something inspiring, and share your creation with the world. But when you've touched one life, you've touched 1,000. Thanks for joining us on Inspirational Journeys, and have a blessed day.